Hello, I'm Nadia Jani and you're watching A News. Here are your top stories. At least 18 people have been killed and dozens more injured after a massive Russian overnight attack on Kyiv. Germany's defence supplier increases military output amid Russian threat. And the World Food Programme warns of deepening humanitarian crisis in Gaza. First tonight, at least 18 people have been killed, including 4 children, as Russian forces launched a massive overnight attack on Kyiv. Explosions damaged homes, offices and schools. Here's more on that story.
Overnight, Russian forces carried out one of the largest aerial assaults on Kyiv in months. Russia launched nearly 600 drones and more than 30 missiles, including hypersonic and ballistic types. Ukraine's air defences intercepted most of them, but explosions shattered buildings across multiple districts. Damage was reported to homes, schools, offices, a shopping centre, the EU mission building and media offices. One 5-storey apartment building was completely destroyed. Among the victims, children lost their lives, including those aged 2, 14 and 17. Dozens more were injured and emergency crews are still working to recover victims from rubble, including those trapped under destroyed buildings.
The missile hit and people were simply thrown by the impact. They were lying there. There was a woman, a wife and their child. The woman was under a cement block, her head was cut, it was split open, it was cut. She was under this block, we were not able to lift it. It was only lifted when the emergency services came, they used a lift. But she was not saved. I saw a man, he was sitting on the ground. He was screaming for help. His leg was broken, and as far as I could see, it was cut. There was also a child crying for help. We first helped the child, it was under the rubble. We threw pieces of rubble aside, and we pulled the child out, we carried it away. The child was then taken away.
I keep thinking this is not the first time when Russia destroyed my home. First it was in Donetsk, then in Kharkiv, where I moved from Donetsk, and now here.
President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the attack, saying Russia had once again chosen missiles over diplomacy. European leaders also responded. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called it a deliberate attack on civilians and announced further sanctions along with the use of frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron described the bombardment as barbaric. Meanwhile, Moscow's defence ministry said its air defence systems intercepted and destroyed 102 Ukrainian drones overnight, which had targeted at least 7 regions.
To combat these attacks, German Defence Minister Boris Pistorius has signalled his government is ready to back Ukraine with comprehensive security guarantees. However, he won't discuss the specifics publicly until formal negotiations begin. Germany is also advancing aid efforts from funding joint ventures for long-range weapon production to delivering air defence systems. Meanwhile, France Chancellor Lars Klingbeil confirmed that Berlin will participate in Ukraine's security guarantees as well. It will align support measures with Kyiv's need and under its leadership in upcoming negotiations.
We consider every contribution we might be able and willing to deliver to provide for security guarantees for Ukraine, but we don't discuss that now publicly. And another point is, obviously, Germany is the biggest supporter of Ukraine after the US, and our role will become even more important in the months and years to come. So there's nobody I know in the world who will ever doubt our commitment in supporting Ukraine.
And secondly, that the Americans said we want to be involved when it comes to security guarantees. These discussions are now ongoing, so we are only 9 days since last Monday. I know that hard work is being done by our senior military people, by foreign ministers, by national security advisors. So, I mean, this is detailed, difficult stuff. You have to hammer that all out. So the fact that 9 days later we have not agreed on everything is not a bad signal. It means that we are working hard, and I'm absolutely sure we will get there, deciding on the security guarantees, what it will look like with American involvement, US involvement, plus, hopefully, as soon as possible, that meeting between Zelensky and Putin.
Europe's artillery output has soared sixfold in just 2 years. Production is on track to hit 2 million rounds by year end, due to the launch of Germany's Rheinmetall's new artillery plant, which is now Europe's largest ammunition facility.
Europe can now produce 6 times more artillery shells annually than it could 2 years ago, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said during a visit to Germany. The production is expected to reach 2 million rounds by the end of this year, Rutte said. The news comes amid a broader push by European countries to strengthen their defence industries, both to bolster their own security and Ukraine's defences in the face of Russian aggression. Speaking at the opening of the Rheinmetall artillery plant, Rutte said that the German defence manufacturer accounts for a big part of this growth. The factory alone is planning to produce 350,000 artillery shells a year.
Across the alliance, we have already expanded existing production lines and opened many new ones, like this one here in Unterlüß. This is absolutely crucial for our own security and also to keep supporting Ukraine in its fight today and to deter any aggression in the future. We fight with well-equipped and well-trained troops who need ships, jets, tanks, drones, ammunition and more. And that's what our defense industries across NATO must produce and deliver. Faster than ever. It's part of our overall deterrence. Deterrence doesn't come from 5%. Deterrence comes from the capability to indeed fight potential enemies. And Rheinmetall is extremely important here.
With a €500 million investment, the Unterlüß site is now Europe's largest ammunition facility. It joins a growing network of expansion projects. Rheinmetall is laying groundwork for a pan-European defence infrastructure. This construction marks a strategic surge in European defence industrial capacity.
This year alone, Russia is expected to roll out at least 1,500 tanks, 3,000 armoured vehicles and hundreds of Iskander missiles. As for China, it already has the world's largest navy and some of the largest defence companies in the world. Their military build-up points in a clear direction. They are preparing for long-term confrontation and competition with us. So yes, we are being challenged.
For NATO, the new Rheinmetall plant is more than just a factory. It's a signal that Europe is accelerating its defence production to match the scale of threats ahead. As Russia and China expand their militaries, the alliance is betting that speed, volume, and industrial strength will be just as decisive as diplomacy.
To discuss this further, I'm now joined by Lieutenant General Marco Sironia. Good evening.
Good evening.
My first question is, what is the strategic importance of Rheinmetall's new factory for Europe's defence capabilities?
Well, it's for the utmost importance, because one of the big deficits that the European, especially the European countries, NATO European countries, have is ammunition 150 millimeters. That's the big deficit for all. Not only to support Ukraine. That is when we realized 2 or 3 years ago that the NATO countries don't have enough ammunition to supply Ukraine, but also the war stocks are very low. And the worst thing is we didn't have enough capabilities to produce. almost all the countries close their factories of ammunition. That was the case of Portugal. It's one of them. And after that, of course, we realized that we have to start to rebuild the capability to produce special munitions. Of course, the problem is not only ammunitions; it's other missiles and anti-aircraft missiles. And Rheinmetall, it's the big producer in Europe, not only for ammunitions, artillery ammunitions, but also for missiles and anti-aircraft systems and so on. So it's important to have not only the German factories, of course, but the UK factories, the French, the Spaniards, the Italians, the Polish, to improve the capability to produce ammunition, because it's something that we have to have in stock. Because without stocks, it's not enough to have the cannons and the systems. So we have to have the ammunition also. So it's important to have both things and have the capability, because this dissuasion, deterrence is about that. It's the capability to fight for a long time. Not all. The situation was 2 years ago for European countries, not European countries, have capability in ammunition, especially this kind of ammunition, to fight for 6 or 7 days. What we see from the example of the war in Ukraine, that is not enough. So we have to have the capability to sustain a war for the time that we need.
And in what ways does this reflect Germany's broader role in strengthening Europe's security?
Yes, of course. For the aim of Rheinmetall it's business also, of course, because they are a private factory, of course, and the ammunitions, it's something that is a big deficit in the international market. It's not enough. The world don't produce enough ammunitions to satisfy the needs of the big countries. So it's important also. Not only the capability to produce and sell, but also the capability to produce for the European armies. Of course, it's also for selling, but it's a very big step, an important step for what we call to have some strategic autonomy. We NATO, especially the European NATO countries, of course. And that strategic autonomy is very, very important for the future.
And how
as I said. Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to let you finish. Sorry about that, General Marco. Go ahead.
No problem. It's what I'm saying. It's just for a good deterrence capability, we have to have the systems, the hardware, but also the ammunitions and the missiles and all the things that can help to sustain a war. The best thing is to have the equipments and the ammunitions and all the systems to deter an adversary to give the first step to have an invasion. So that is the most important thing that Europeans have to think about. And after this, the deterrence didn't work, okay, we have to fight to show the capability to fight. To fight is not enough capability. It also needs will, and special political will, but also the will of the nations, the countries, the people. But without ammunition and without systems, it's not going to work, the deterrence.
And my final question is, how you mentioned sustainability to make sure the weapons sustain for a long duration. How does that project balance between urgent wartime needs and long-term security planning for Europe?
Look, we unfortunately for the European countries, the future is tomorrow. So we lost a lot of time not doing the right things. So keeping the stocks, especially the stocks and the capability to produce systems, military systems, very, very low. Unfortunately, in a kind of war like Ukraine and Russia, a conventional war, the needs are very high. Even the United States are not able to produce enough to support the allies in case of need. So it's very important to have to boost and to have these factories, these champions that can mobilize and also contract and subcontract other companies. Metallic companies that work in this kind of business, to put them and to ask them also to produce more ammunition. So they are a little bit the engine. So Rheinmetall and others companies, France and Italy and so on, they should be also the engine for the improve the production for levels that we need to do it in short times. Of course, we need money because the factories, as we know, don't produce things without the perspective of sell it in the market. So for this is important that the countries, all the NATO allied countries, show the will to buy the ammunition and to stay in this production in the future.
Thank you so much for joining me this evening, Lieutenant General Marco Sironia. Thank you.
Yes, but it is a pleasure. Thank you very much.
France is at the centre of Europe's latest financial and political storm. Mounting debt, unpopular austerity measures and growing public unrest are putting heavy pressure on the government. Ministers are now caught in between, trying to calm investors and facing public anger among voters. Our correspondent Anita Sharma has more.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where France is grappling with rapidly rising public debt, an unpopular austerity drive, and a political showdown that threatens to ignite market turbulence, drawing fresh international concern over the Eurozone's stability. France's budget deficit now stands near 5.8% of GDP, with public debt projected to spike from 113% in 2024 to 118% by next year, far exceeding the Stability and Growth Pact benchmark. Markets have taken notice. French 10-year bond yields have surged, widening the spread against German bonds to its highest level since April. The country's main stock market index, the CAC 40, is down roughly 2% this week, and banking giants like BNP Paribas and Société Générale saw their share prices tank over 6% as bond market volatility spilled into equities. Meanwhile, warnings loom of a 5 to 10% equity correction if political gridlock persists, especially in sensitive sectors like financials and real estate. Analysts from investment banking giant Goldman Sachs say French Prime Minister François Bayrou may tone down deficit-cutting targets to save his administration, but they caution any resulting increase in debt will put France's credit profile and potential rating back in focus. They note that while a slower pace of fiscal tightening could offer a short-term growth boost, market instability and policy uncertainty remain major drags on expansion. Bayrou staked his government on a high-stakes confidence vote scheduled for September 8th, tied to a sweeping €44 billion austerity package. He is proposing cuts such as scrapping public holidays and hiking medical charges to reel in the deficit. But his leadership is perilously fragile. With no parliamentary majority, Bayrou may soon become the second prime minister in a year to fall, risking more profound instability. The proposed conference vote comes amid public rage. 67% of voters surveyed want President Emmanuel Macron to resign, while 63% back new elections. Mass protests are already brewing. Amid the chaos, France's finance minister sounded an alarming note. France could require a bailout from the global lender of last resort, the International Monetary Fund, if the country's debt trajectory remains unchecked. While Éric Lombard later urged calm and defended France's resilience, his remark underscores the potential severity of the financial and political storm. But as confidence in Paris falters, the murmur amongst investors and analysts has become a roar. France's political fragility is no longer abstract. It's a market-moving reality. With fiscal credibility and political endurance on the line, the Eurozone's stability hangs in the balance. Many fear this crisis could soon escalate beyond France's borders and test the endurance of EU fiscal frameworks. Stay tuned as this high-stakes drama unravels into September. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in the Netherlands.
The United Nations Security Council warns against using starvation as a weapon of war. It comes after all members except the United States agree that famine in Gaza is a man-made crisis. A report by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification System warns that the number of people experiencing famine will increase by next month.
All United Nations Security Council members, except the United States, on Wednesday say the famine in Gaza is a man-made crisis. They warn that the use of starvation as a weapon of war is banned under international humanitarian law. In a joint press conference, 14 members called for an immediate, unconditional ceasefire, the release of all hostages, a substantial surge of aid, and for Israel to lift all restrictions on aid delivery.
We stand in front of you, especially disturbed by the levels of acute malnutrition among children in Gaza. We note that at least 41,000 children are at heightened risk of death from malnutrition between now and June 2026. This is a man-made crisis. The use of starvation as a weapon of war is clearly prohibited under international humanitarian law. Famine in Gaza must be stopped immediately.
A report by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification System said that 514,000 people are experiencing famine. It warned that it's due to rise to more than 640,000 by the end of September. However, Israel and the US don't believe the findings.
We all recognize that hunger is a real issue in Gaza and that there are significant humanitarian needs which must be met. Addressing those needs is a priority for the United States. However, we can only solve problems with credibility and integrity. Unfortunately, the recent report from the IPC doesn't pass the test on either.
Israel challenged the report, calling it false and biased.
Let's continue to examine the facts. Let's speak about the aid. The UN's own records show more than 500 trucks carrying over 46,000 tons of aid have entered Gaza. That's since May 19, 94% of which was food. Yet, according to the UN agenda, if you read carefully, only about 1 in 9 or 8 trucks actually reached their destinations. 1 out of 9. Why? Because armed groups and Hamas terrorists intercepted the rest of the trucks inside Gaza. Not in Israel, not at the gates, not at the checkpoints, inside Gaza.
Danon also said Israel will provide further details in the coming days regarding a strike on Nasser Hospital on Monday that killed at least 20 people, including 5 journalists.
Staying on Gaza, the UN is warning that food aid entering Gaza is still far from enough to prevent famine. The World Food Programme says deliveries have increased slightly but remain well below previous levels as hundreds of thousands of people face severe hunger.
More food aid is entering Gaza, but supplies remain far from sufficient to prevent widespread hunger, the head of the United Nations World Food Programme said on Thursday. Speaking from Jerusalem, WFP Executive Director Cindy McCain said the agency is struggling to meet the enormous needs of Gaza's population.
What I've been asking for all along is more access, more access, more access, so I can get in food, get it in its scale, and be able to feed the most vulnerable people that are in Gaza. We are right now, we're getting a little bit more food in. We're moving in the right direction, let me put it that way, but it's not nearly enough to do what we need to do to make sure that people are not malnourished and not starving.
McCain said the WFP is now able to deliver around 100 aid trucks per day, compared to 600 trucks daily that entered Gaza during a previous ceasefire. She added that delays and clearance issues continue to hinder distribution. A recent integrated food security phase classification report estimated that almost a quarter of Gaza's population are already facing famine conditions in Gaza City and nearby areas. The report also warned that famine could spread to the central and southern districts of Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis by the end of September. Israel has rejected the findings, calling them false and biased in favour of Hamas. Meanwhile, in Gaza, residents queued for hours at soup kitchens, many holding empty pots.
I come every morning to get a meal that we rely on, and the meal we get's not enough for anything. I ask the people in charge of aid to increase the aid supply so that we can eat and live.
Two-thirds of those here, or more than half of them, don't take food with them and leave. We come here since the morning and the sun is up. Man, look at my hands. The difference in the colour of my hands and my body. The difference is from the sun. We say we don't care for the sake of one's children, so that one doesn't lay his hand on something, doesn't steal and doesn't rob. We are okay with the humiliation and everything, so that one can continue to live with dignity.
Despite international pledges, aid agencies say the scale of need remains unprecedented, warning that without a significant increase in deliveries, famine will worsen in the coming months.
Moving to China now, where the upcoming Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin is set to chart a 10-year roadmap for development and regional security. Pakistan's Planning Minister Ahsan Iqbal says the mission reflects the SCO's real strength, emphasizing that lasting solutions to conflicts lie in dialogue and cooperation rather than war.
With just a few days left, preparations are complete in Tianjin for the largest ever Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, scheduled for Sunday and Monday. The event will gather leaders from more than 20 countries and representatives of 10 international organizations for 2 days of high-level talks. The summit will review past achievements, adopt the Tianjin Declaration, and set out a 10-year roadmap focusing on development, security, and regional cooperation. At the core of these discussions lies the SCO's mission to promote peace through dialogue. Pakistan's Minister for Planning, Development and Special Initiatives, Ahsan Iqbal, stressed the importance of collective action when facing today's challenges.
I think one very important lesson of our times is that these challenges that we are discussing are now cross-border challenges. They are global challenges. They are regional challenges. No single country can fight them on its own. So the solution to most of these problems is more collaboration. Solution to conflicts is not fighting wars. It is through engagement, through dialogue. Every conflict can be solved by dialogue.
His remarks echo the central goal of this year's summit, to strengthen the SCO's role as a platform for peace and problem solving in the region.
So therefore, under SCO, we do hope that the regional conflicts can be solved through dialogue, through greater support by SCO member countries to bring conflicting parties on table. So I think maybe SCO can play a role in bringing about de-escalation in different parts of the world through promoting dialogue through its platform.
As Tianjin prepares to host the summit, expectations are high that the SCO will deliver new momentum for cooperation, dialogue and shared stability across Africa, Asia and Europe.
Turning to the region now, Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev accused Moscow of failing to provide answers after Russian forces shot down an Azerbaijani civilian plane, calling it a serious blow to bilateral ties. Speaking to Al Arabiya TV, he said the lack of transparency along with attacks on Azerbaijanis in Russia has caused anger and disappointment.
The shooting down of an Azerbaijani civilian plane by Russia and the reaction of Russian officials to that created a very big frustration and disappointment in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev said this on his interview to Al Arabiya TV channel.
Only professionalism and courage of the pilots made it possible for plane to land. And fortunately, it landed in Kazakhstan, not in Russia. It landed in Kazakhstan, and there was a crash. Some people survived, and we have those who gave evidence. We have 2 people who were in the plane who were injured by the shrapnel which penetrated the fuselage. We have remainings of the plane, and immediately I sent the team. It's not far away, it's only 40 minutes flight. Immediately our team was there on the site and they filmed everything. So you can find it on the internet. All the fuselage was in holes of shrapnel. It was damaged by Russian air defense system. So shooting the plane should have happened in the first place, but that was a tragic mistake.
President Aliyev also said until this day, no explanation has been given from Russian side about the plane shooting. Ilham Aliyev also talked about the mistreatment of Azerbaijanis in Russia.
Our people were disappointed, angry, frustrated. We were waiting for, okay, sooner or later investigation will come to an end. But then these unmotivated attacks on Azerbaijanis in Russia started. 2 people have been killed and tortured.
Speaking of Azerbaijan-Russia relations, President Aliyev emphasized that the recent incidents impacted the bilateral ties, but official Baku doesn't want to aggravate these relations.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is highlighting Turkey's push for homegrown air defence as the country develops new systems and deepens defence ties internationally. Our correspondent Aliya Aziz has more from Istanbul.
Turkey is taking major steps to strengthen its air defense and expand its role in global defense production. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan hailed the delivery of key components of the country's multi-layered steel dome system, calling it a turning point for national security. The system, designed to counter low, medium, and high-altitude threats, integrates land and sea-based platforms developed locally. Erdogan said 47 vehicles worth $460 million are now being delivered to the Turkish armed forces, alongside 3 Hisar medium-range systems. He stressed that no country can look to the future with confidence without its own air defense architecture. Turkish defense firm Aselsan is playing a central role developing artificial intelligence-based command and control software that allows hundreds of systems to operate as one. Officials say Turkey's defense industry localization rate has now reached 83%, with exports nearing $7.5 billion annually, and Ankara's defense push is reaching abroad. Turkish defense giant Havelsan signed a strategic deal with Egypt's Arab Organization for Industrialization to co-produce a new generation of unmanned aerial vehicles. The partnership covers the Baha, Bulut, and Bozbe UAVs, set to be produced for both Egypt and the wider African sector. Together, these moves highlight Turkey's strategy, securing its skies at home while building long-term industrial and defense partnerships globally. For A News, this is Aliya Aziz, Istanbul, Turkey.
Staying on Turkey, Turkey's natural gas, oil and petroleum products imports increased in June. The Energy Market Regulatory Authority reported on Thursday. Natural gas imports jumped nearly 37% year-on-year to 3.17 billion cubic meters, with most delivered through a pipeline. Meanwhile, oil and petroleum imports also rose nearly 6%, hitting 4.61 million tons. Crude made up the bulk, with Russia supplying over 2.9 million tonnes. The total energy import bill hit $4.5 billion in June, bringing Turkey's annual energy cost to $65.1 billion. Iran has confirmed that the IAEA inspectors are back in the country, but only to oversee spent fuel replacement at the Bushehr nuclear plant. The government insists broader inspection access remains off the table, but the UK, France and Germany have now begun the process on restoring UN sanctions on Iran. Our correspondent has more.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that IAEA inspectors are in Iran only to monitor replacing the spent fuel of Bushehr nuclear plant after the Supreme National Security Council agreed with their visit based on the parliament's legislation on limiting the relations with the agency. Speaking to reporters following a meeting with members of the Parliamentary Committee of National Security and Foreign Policy, he added that Iran and IAEA have so far exchanged ideas on the new modality of bilateral cooperation which is being prepared. The minister's statements were made after the reaction of a number of lawmakers to the visit of the agency's inspectors following the legislation which has suspended Tehran's cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog. The visit was after 2 rounds of talks between Iran and IAEA in Tehran and Vienna in August, while both sides are working to finalize the new cooperation documents, including on visiting the civilian nuclear sites. Iran suspended its ties with the agency after Israel and US bombed its nuclear sites in June and criticized the IAEA for failing to condemn the attacks on its facilities under the agency's safeguards. Tehran also slammed the agency for issuing a resolution on its non-compliance of obligations in June, which Tehran says served as a pretext to attack non-military nuclear sites days later. The Iranian foreign minister also warned that Tehran is prepared for both scenarios of interaction or confrontation if France, Germany and the UK, as parties of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, JCPOA, decide to apply for reimposition of sanctions. Araghchi said that if the European powers activate the snapback mechanism on return of UN nuclear sanctions, it will negatively affect Tehran's narrow cooperation with the IAEA. In the meantime, UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric in New York welcomed the presence of IAEA inspectors in Iran and expressed the hope that Tehran will totally complete with the agency and fulfill its obligation under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
Secretary of the Security Council of Armenia, Armen Grigoryan, will travel to Tehran on Friday. The trip is at the invitation of his Iranian counterpart, Ali Larijani, according to the Armenian Security Council's press office. During the visit, he is scheduled to hold a series of working meetings with Iranian officials to discuss matters of mutual interest. The visit follows an official trip to Yerevan by Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian this month. Azerbaijan's Karabakh FC has qualified for the main stage of the Champions League for the second time. The return match of the UEFA Champions League playoffs against Hungary's Ferencváros was held in Baku and ended with a 3-2 victory for the guests. However, Karabakh's first match win of 3-1 was enough to secure their qualification. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev congratulated the team in a post on social media, calling their success a new page in the country's football history. Well, that's all we have time for now. From all of us in the studio, thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.